their local area. So there might be a number of different opportunities that there are. So there's likely to be a mixture of different online and offline things that are useful. You might have, stuff that we've always had, like notice boards outside community, outside community halls and things like that. You might have a local newspaper. You might have newsletters that are produced by different community groups as well. You would have networks that exist within those community groups as well. So there'd be meetings that they would have where you could go and talk to people. So you'd want to do some desk research essentially to begin with, which is to ask yourself, where are people meeting and where are they talking? So those would be the offline sort of things. Mm-hmm. There's probably many, many more, but you'd have to think about what they are and maybe ask a few people. But then online, you can do some searching as well. So there's likely to be Facebook groups. A lot of areas now have Facebook groups.
Yeah.
So it's quite easy to search on Facebook for groups. So you can do a Facebook search just to find out if there are any groups. Again, sometimes groups are quite hard to find on Facebook, so you might want to ask some people that you know in the area, are there any Facebook groups that you use? Mm-hmm. Some of them are going to be less or more relevant. So there are lots of selling groups, for example. I'm not proposing that you put information in those, but there will be other ones that are kind of more for neighbourhoods. Mm-hmm. And actually, the other thing that you can do is, ask yourself what groups exist generally. So not just online or offline, but what groups exist. So, what tenants and residents associations are there?
All right. Do you mean community groups?
Yeah, community groups. But, think of those different terminologies. So tenants and residents associations, community groups, voluntary groups, neighbourhood. These terms are quite useful for you in thinking about what groups might exist in your area if you don't already know. So once you've got a list of these different groups and the spaces they might be in, so they might also be on Twitter, they might be on blogs, you might want to do some Google searches as well, then you've got your audience and you've got the different places that you want to communicate to. I think that's pretty much it. Mm-hmm. There might be some stuff that you can do with a council as well. So councils produce material as well, so it's worth contacting them. But you're probably kind of got as much as you need if you've gone to those, if you thought about all of those different places and you've had a search and you've asked a few people. I think that's absolutely vital to getting the word out, because the real issue is you can produce as much material as you like, but if you haven't already thought about who your audience is and how you get to them, then, forget it, right?
Anywhere. Yeah.
And actually, local groups are often much, much more useful and valuable to you. And there might be blogs as well, like hyperlocal blogs and things like that, than some of the more formal media that you could contact. I wouldn't say that there's any reason why you wouldn't contact local newspapers if you're lucky enough to have them in your area.
Yeah.
But, think about those groups as well. Once you've done that, I think you need to ask yourself about timeframes. So timeframes are essential because you need to work out how you're going to get a group of people interested and enthused in something in sufficient time for them to actually be able to do it. So this could have an impact on your PB process. If you're thinking about it, you want to make sure that you've got enough time to get some materials produced in whatever format you need to have attended a few meetings and talked to people, and then, actually got them in the right place and have enough time themselves to organise their diaries to actually be involved in the PB process.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about, isn't it?
It's a lot to think about. And actually, it's something that you might not plan to do. So usually you're like, we ought to do our PB process now. And then you kind of think about, well, how do we get to people afterwards? Mm. But, in an ideal world, that wouldn't be the case. I'm not suggesting for one moment that we live in an ideal world. So, you are going to have limited time to do these things. And it's important to think about, what does that mean? What are the implications for that later on? So once you've kind of got your time frame, and you've got your audience, then you need to think about materials. And I think you need to think about a set of materials in different formats. So you might want to think about materials in formats that are useful, that you can sort of transfer over, that work online and offline if possible. So that's possible. But you need to think about, what's the message that you're going with to start off with? So what are you actually telling people? And you want to prioritize that information as well. So you need to think about what's the most important piece of information that you're handing over, and what are the sort of subordinate, if I can put it like that, the kind of pieces of information that are still important and useful, but are less so. And then you want to be thinking, okay, so what's the couple of sentences that I want to be telling everybody about this? Okay. So wherever you go, you need a sort of,
like a slogan.
Sorry, say that again.
Do you mean like a slogan?
I mean like a slogan, yeah, like a one line that you're going to say, which is, when we talk about PB processes are really annoying because PB is zero to like anyone. I mean, I'm not even sure, if I'm being honest, that it means that much for people who know about this stuff. Like, PB is just initials, right? So it's easier to say than participatory budgeting.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything, does it? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Participatory budgeting really, when we're being honest, like that, what we're saying is, guys and girls, if I can use a really cheesy expression, like, here's some money that you can spend on your community. Tell us what you think the ideas are that you'd like to spend it on, and then we can have a conversation about, as a community, what's relevant and what we think is worth spending on together, and then we can vote on it. Yeah, that's what we're talking about doing, right? That is basically, 9 times out of 10, that's it. Mm-hmm. And what did that take to say? I didn't do it very elegantly, and no one should ever say guys and girls ever. But apart from that, basically that's the information that you want to provide people, along with a bit of information about how they can vote. So how can you take part?
Yeah.
What the time frame is. So, when can you do this? How can you do this? When can you do this?
Where?
Yeah, where? And then maybe the other thing that you want to be talking about, and this is pretty obvious, and I think to some extent everyone who's ever been involved in these processes will know this immediately. If you've already done it, or you can show other examples of where it's worked, that'll be handy as well. So you really want to be able to kind of, as part of whatever communication you do, you might want to also tell people about why this process works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Justification for going through this. What's your incentive? So, we already know, if we look at the PB Scotland website, that there are lots of good examples of where videos from communities that have already done PB processes, where things have happened that are really good and really make a difference to those communities. And of course, if you haven't done one before, you might want to share some of those too.